Hello, everybody. So in this webinar today, we'll be taking the mystery out of rankings and give you actions you can take away to help your websites rank higher more often. But first, let's think about what exactly do you want out of SEO? When we talk about SEO objectives, we tend to hear the following. You want to rank number one. You want to rank at the top of the organic search listings. You want to increase click-through rates from organic search to your site. And you want to get more traffic, organic clicks, sessions, page views to your website. All of these points are valid, but there are some subtle distinctions that will help you understand rankings in a different light and measure what actually matters for SEO. So what does good quality SEO look like? You actually want to be visible and take up space in organic search results. So it's not just about how highly you rank, but how broadly too. Aim to rank in the top 5 positions for a wide range of topics your users are searching for and the questions they're asking. Also, it's not just about appearing top of the traditional text-based search results. Think about how you can rank more than once in the top half of Google and maximize your visibility. You do want to increase click-through rate, but for engaged users, your audience, and keep them on the page. This is important to show Google that your content is valuable to its users. And don't just look to increase traffic, think about having better quality traffic as well. You could create content on any number of topics, like vegan party food, for example, and get more traffic to your website, but will that content actually make a difference to your goals? Sessions as a metric is still important to measure, but think about how you can measure content engagement as well. So this leads us to demystifying rankings. Ranking highly or being visible and taking up space is why we're here today. And we're going to walk you through 10 things you can do in order to rank. In our last webinar, Nick reviewed what Google wants. And what Google wants is to provide the most relevant content available to resolve searchers' queries in the most helpful format possible. Knowing how Google works and knowing what Google values takes the mystery out of how to rank. Ultimately, Google wants to give searchers what they want. And to rank highly and often, you have to persuade Google that your content is worth showing to its users and that searchers will get the experience that they want from your site. So you need to prove to Google that your content is relevant. It gives searchers the answers that they're looking for. Your content is popular, so pages are linked to from inside and outside the site. It's transparent, so it's obvious what content is on the page from what is shown on the SERP, the search engine result page. Your content has to be attractive and engaging, so people want to click on your search result and they stay there when they do. And your content has to be expert and trustworthy, so your information has to help, not harm the user. How exactly do we do all of that? In this section, we'll give you 10 top tactics that we find have the biggest impact on rankings. For each, we'll give you the theory behind why this works, matched with a next step you can take to get started. So in at number 10 is Optimise for enhanced SERP listings. So think beyond the traditional text search results. Why is this? You want to rank more than once on the first page of Google and rank in more visible and engaging ways. On the left, you have featured snippets, which feature in 7% of searches. And on the right, FAQ schema markup with expandable content on the search engine result page. You know these, so focus on them as part of your SEO strategy. A featured snippet strategy was a key part of our content optimization work that we did with Shakespeare Birthplace Trust to grow their visibility of their website for Shakespeare-related education resources. So what we did was we looked at the page and the content template, and we had a look at restructuring it to create featured snippets. So what we did was we moved, they had like a quirky intro, and we moved this content down to create space for a better optimized H2 subheading. And then what we did was we created this new section here with a H2 subheading, Macbeth summary, and content, so 1 to 2 sentences that we use to target a feature snippet underneath it. So essentially we designed this new section of content in order to gain a feature snippet spot. And the result of that was that we got 129 new feature snippets, so position 0 spots at the top of Google search engine results for Shakespeare plays terms. And the next step for you is to design content for featured snippets. There are loads of different enhanced SERP features, but feature snippets is a really actionable one that you can do today. See what queries generate feature snippets. So we use our keyword research tools to show us which queries have feature snippets, but it's also possible to Google to see which relevant queries have the feature snippet box at the top of Google search results. Choose that target keyword and write a clear self-contained answer to that search query. So write between 40 and 60 words, 1 to 3 short sentences, and include the keyword 1 to 2 times. And signpost the answer by placing it after a HTML subheading. Init number 9 is strengthen your entity. So help Google see you as the powerhouse you are. You might recognize this diagram. This was one that Nick showed in his previous webinar to show what Google understands as an entity. So Google is trying to understand beyond your website and understand who you are as an organization, who you are, what you do, and how you link to other organizations as well. Here's an example of an organisation doing this well. So this is Motor Neurone Disease Association. And when you search for their brand name, this is what comes up. On the right here, you have a knowledge panel where this is generated by Google, and it takes all the information that it knows about the organisation and puts it in this panel on the right-hand side of the search engine result page. Also, when you search for MND Association, you see that they have all of their social media pages and other pages that are their property in a way. So you've got Wikipedia page, Just Giving as well. So when you search for them, the search result is absolutely dominated by them and what they do. And users get a really clear understanding, and Google does as well, about who they are as an organization. So when you search for your brand name, is it the same? Does Google know who you are, and is it full of information about you? The next step for you is to work to demonstrate your expertise and values to Google, and to keep creating this understanding of your entity on the search engine results page. Some tips for how to get this is to make it really clear on your website who you are and what you do. So make sure you have a clear about page and contact information, and that about page says clearly who you are and what you do, and the contact information is also great if that's in the footer of the site as well. Second tip is to make sure that your website is tagged up with organization schema markup. We'll come on to schema markup in a second, but essentially this is a way of telling Google who you are and how you link to other pieces of information about you, such as social media accounts. And the third tip is to make sure you have a Wikipedia and Wikidata page. And if you do, make sure the information in there is up to date, because this is how Google will take some of this data to put it into the knowledge panel about you. Number 8, implement schema markup. So schema markup is spoon feeding information to Google so that there's no room for misinterpretation about who you are. We could do like a whole other presentation in itself about schema, but what it is it's structured data, and it's a way of tagging up the content on your page to make it easier for search engines to pinpoint important information about you. So search engines use it to identify and define information. They extract data from your web pages. You can be clever in nesting or mentioning other schema markup types, and form relationships between this information in your website as well. There are myriad reasons to use schema markup, but the most important one for today is the bottom one. Information can be displayed in an attractive way in search engine results. And here's an example. So here are some examples of where we've helped clients gain enhanced SERP features using schema markup. On the left, FAQ page schema markup has enabled user questions to be answered in the search results. And this is something that Nick has been working on with Islamic Relief.
Thanks, Jenny. So yeah, I lead on the Islamic Relief account, and this is something that we implemented on a range of their pages, including this Zakat page here, which is a key revenue donation driving term. And it was really, really easy to implement this. We just injected some JSON code. So that's just one of the ways that you can do this. Just putting a small piece of code in the source code of the site. And what it does is you can see that it increases the amount of real estate that is on the search results page. So if you think back to the grid of 4 that Jenny highlighted earlier, taking up space is really important now, especially in terms of these busy search engine results pages. And especially if a user was to click on one of these FAQs and expand it, what it does is it pushes the competitors further down, potentially below the fold, making them less visible and really highlighting your organization. So yeah, I just wanted to expand on that a little bit, but thanks, Jenny.
Expand on it like an FAQ page schema. And on the right, this is another type of schema markup. So this is event schema markup for Great Ormond Street Hospital charity. And what Google now does is it shows information about the event in multiple ways, highlighting the date and location, for example. So what it does is it takes, you've tagged and flagged up this information on the page, and it takes this and serves it up in search engine results. Your next step is to ask developers to mark up key information using schema.org markup. It doesn't just have to be developers, you could do it yourselves, but asking a developer to tag up information is a future-proof way of implementing it, so that if editors ever change that information, the schema markup changes along with it on the page. There are so many different types of schema markup. I think there are over 600 different types, but the ones that have the biggest impact on search engine results pages and the features, and ones that are really useful for charities as well, are the following. You've got organization schema markup, which tells Google, like spoon feeds Google that information about you as an organization. Event schema markup, FAQ page, and there's others, for example, review schema markup, if you have, say, a product or a course that you want to tag up and show information about on the search result. And for one of our clients as well, they actually have recipes, and there's recipe schema markup that you can use so that recipes appear in that recipe box. As Nick was saying, you can implement it using JSON, so this JavaScript script on the page, or if you have a WordPress site, there's plugins like Yoast, which will help you implement schema markups on different content types. However you decide to implement it, make sure that you test it using Google's structured data testing tool, just to make sure that it's all correct and is eligible to appear as a search feature as well. In at 7 is improving crawl health, so making life easier for Google and searchers. This is important because Google wants an easy time crawling your site. What you're seeing on the right here is the first crawl we did of a client site, where the red dots were links to broken or redirecting pages. Errors like this experienced during Google's crawl, like trying to crawl broken pages, give Google a really hard time understanding the relationship between content on your site and can impact your rankings. So crawl errors could be, for example, 404 not found pages, 500 server errors, also issues with canonical tags, no index or other meta directives, and having an XML sitemap which has crawl errors or broken pages in there, and where the live pages that you want to be indexed don't match the live pages that you're saying you want indexed on the site. The next step, whether in-house or with an external agency, is to undergo a technical audit to find and fix all of these crawl errors. You can do this by using a crawling tool or SEO software to flag on-site errors. We also like to use Google Search Console's coverage report to find crawling and indexing issues, which we can then investigate and fix. In at number 6 is building backlinks. You want to see the number of backlinks to your website increase from high quality referring domains. And this is because backlinks is one of Google's top 3 ranking factors. A link back to your site is a vote of trust, and backlinks from high authority sites speak to your authority as a website. We found that this is often very difficult for charities to do, as budget or resources make backlink outreach activity hard. It's difficult, but it's still really important to do, and there are some steps that you can take to start. Your next step is to create a sustainable and easy strategy for building backlinks. Recommendations that we make for nonprofits include upskilling your team on the importance of backlinks and best practices. This could be the whole team. However, we recommend starting with those people who write content or promote content. So, for example, your PR and campaigns teams. Leverage existing relationships and partnerships. So you might have sponsors, for example, or other relationships where their websites which really should be linking back to you. So you could do a check that you're being linked back to and asking for backlinks back from your existing partners. And redirecting broken backlinks. So if you've ever migrated content or deleted a page, chances are that there are old versions of pages out there that no longer redirect to your site. These pages may still be linked to, and by restoring the redirect from the old page to the new version of the page, you are reinstating the backlinks and bringing back that lost equity back to your site. Here's another idea. In this example, we've researched the link intersection between several animal welfare charities. This has given us a list of websites that link to Blue Cross, Cats Protection, Dogs Trust, and RSPCA, but which don't link to the National Animal Welfare Trust. The National Animal Welfare Trust could use this list to see which websites to reach out to that are likely to offer them a link, like petmd.com, for example, because they already link to similar organisations. So knowing this gives you the power to be able to approach websites for backlinks, knowing that there is a strong chance that they will link back to you. In at 5 is better internal linking. So showing Google which is the most important content on your site. Linking between pages is important for SEO. It shows search engines the structure of the site, as well as the hierarchy and relationship between pages. And this allows them to better understand the page's context and understand popularity of key landing pages on your site. Next step for you is to review your website and update your internal linking. And here's where you need to review. So linking from the menu or navigation bar is seen as a really strong ranking signal. The most important content from a user and ranking perspective should be linked to from here. Interlink between pages within a hub. This shows the relationship between content and strengthens topical relevance. For internal linking, anchor text or link text, so the text which has the link over it, should contain the target keywords or variations on the target keyword. And link within the content wherever relevant. So link back to your key landing pages from new content, and also make sure that you link to the new content from other existing pages as well. So don't just make sure that you add links into any new content you're uploading, but think about which pages should in turn be linking back to that page as well, and go back and edit existing content. And here's an example of internal linking within the Oxfam site, where the Water for All page is linked to using a variety of natural but keyword-rich anchor texts. So safe, clean water and sanitation, Oxfam's work with water. This gives search engines key information and context about the page that they're going to go on and crawl. It's worth saying to bear in mind, it's not the same advice for external link text when link building, as over-engineered link text can look spammy. But for internal links, be as optimized as you want to be. This really helps search engines understand the content that they're going to find and the keywords for which they should be ranking that piece of content. In at 4, find the content gaps. So be unavoidable for all searches around your key topics. You want to rank highly whenever your users are searching for your products, services, or information related to your cause, information that you can provide. And how you can do this is by discovering search queries where you don't rank, but competitors do. With one of our clients, we talk about these content or rankings gaps as unmet user needs, because it's not just about creating content to fill those gaps, but those people searching for information that you don't have on your site may not be getting the information that they want and may have their user needs unmet. These keywords can give you ideas for new content to create, and for user researchers, it helps them understand the language and the search intent of users. Here's another example of where we worked with Greenpeace to create an SEO-led content strategy. We did a content gap analysis report for 25 core topics and found content gaps or topics for which they did not have content to meet their users' needs. So you can see here an example for plastic and plastic pollution, where there were content gaps for topics like the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and low rankings for key terms like microbeads. And from this, we suggested content they needed to create in order to rank competitively. So we suggested 80 new pages to create and also updating their internal structure and their IA in order to link internally and give pages within the same hubs more relevance. And I think Nick wanted to input on this one.
Yeah, and so I have some thoughts about this as well. And I find that this is a really, really powerful piece of analysis that we do, and it always surprises our clients. So the ways it always surprises our clients is to see the keywords that they don't rank for. So our clients often think that they're ranking for everything that's related to them, but often is the case that they're not. And the other thing that I find is really useful about this is it helps to highlight where our clients' competitors are outranking them. So their competitors are serving their audience's needs better than our clients. And that's really, really interesting insight as well. And then the final thing that I find is that is really useful about this report is that it can often highlight new competitors for us as well. So often your direct competitors and your organic competitors can be very different. Your direct competitors being other nonprofits that all offer the same offering as you, but you could be competing with a news publisher or a blog or maybe a government organization that you've never even considered. So all in all, I love this piece of work because I just find it provides such powerful insights.
Thanks, Nick. Yeah, just to illustrate your point on that, this for Greenpeace, you can see in the penultimate column for queries around things like plastic pollution and plastic waste. We actually found that Ethical Consumer, which is a magazine, was actually one of their main organic competitors. So yeah, it does kind of unearth these surprises for us and for the client as well. So your next step is to review competitors' websites to find content that they have that you don't. So review your competitors' ranking data and compare it to yours. We use keyword tools like Moz and Ahrefs, and you could use whichever keyword tool you're using. And also, you can go beyond just looking at your competitors to do deeper keyword research for the topics that you want to rank for. So yeah, we use different tools and methods to do this, but we also use manual SERP research as well. So it's possible to get some insights from Googling you and your competitors and thinking about the queries that your users might use. And there are some free tools that can help with this as well. So you can compare your content to competitors using a side-by-side SEO analysis tool, and that can give you insights into what keywords your competitors are using on their page and optimizing their page for. And there's a Chrome extension called Keywords Everywhere, which gives you, it doesn't give you the keyword search volumes, but it does give you lists of related keywords that could be really useful to you. Init 3 is content design for key landing pages. So work on strengthening your core content. This is even more important than finding content gaps and missing content, because content relevancy is a key ranking factor, and your core pages are usually the ones that are written around the primary short tail keyword for that topic. For example, children's mental health, housing benefit, or cervical screening. Because of this, they usually have a higher overall search volume and a bigger SEO opportunity. And so optimizing or reworking an existing page has a potentially bigger reward. So Nick has, this is another piece of work that he's been doing for Islamic Relief UK, is in restructuring content and redesigning their core pages.
Thanks, Jenny. So, like I said earlier, I've been leading on the Islamic Relief client here. And so basically how this plays into what Jenny's just talked about is we really pushed content hubs, and it gave us a lot of success. So we've created these content hubs of related content around all of Islamic Relief's key offerings, such as Ramadan and Zakat. And we did this by basically conducting a keyword research to find these focus keywords, but also maybe these more awareness-based keywords that are not maybe less directly related to the core topics. We then restructured this content and consolidated the pages, creating this new hub IA. And then we wrote content that answered these searchers' queries, structuring it using header tags and FAQ markup. And then that gave us really fantastic results. And we saw, as a result of this, we saw a 39% increase in traffic and donations. So this is specifically over the Ramadan period. But yeah, what you can see is, you can see in the column on the right, you can see the rankings before we implemented these recommendations. And then you can see the rankings during Ramadan 2021. And so you can see that we've basically moved into position 1 for the majority of our core keywords, the target keywords for this campaign. And including the super high search volume Ramadan 2020, which you can see over the month of Ramadan commanded over 1 million searches. And so we were the only charity, we were the highest ranking charity for that. And then also for the wider Ramadan turn, we were the highest ranking charity on page 1, and actually outranking Al Jazeera and The Guardian.
Probably worth saying there was a good question on the Q&A here about which I actually answered, but it was about, you know, whether organizations should go after these massive terms or whether they should focus on kind of longer tail keywords. And my answer in the Q&A was broadly it depends, which is not a cop out. It's a good answer, but this is a great example where you know, it wasn't a case of you just changing the title tag, was it, for Ramadan and to Ramadan, and then whoosh, we became the only charity on page 1. The competition for this was BBC and Guardian and Wikipedia, and I think what you've demonstrated there is it's a really kind of, it takes an awful lot of thought if you are going after those really big head terms to do such a thing, you know, right to the core of restructuring a site's IA to get that to happen, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and I think and you know, it just shows how far SEO has come as well in, you know, the last 5 years or even 10 years, where to rank for a term like Ramadan, it would just be a case of just putting the word Ramadan 15 times on the page, or 20 times, and then just talking about Ramadan. Whereas now you've got to take a much more calculated approach. You've got to find these things, the wider things that the users are searching for, and you've got to try and include that not only on your page, but as you say, improving the IA and creating these supplementary pages that basically all channel the relevancy and the authority up to the core, like in this case hub page, in this case Ramadan.
And there was this is what was particularly interesting about this, if I recall as well, was the kind of seasonality of it, in that we often, organic search isn't thought of in you have your PPC campaigns in the run up to Christmas or particular moments in the year, but we very much treated this as a kind of seasonal campaign where the rankings changed very, very dynamically, didn't they? So during Ramadan we were ranking, and then they changed very quickly afterwards, which was I'd not seen it with quite so acutely before as these keywords.
Yeah, and I also have never seen it as well, and I've been working in SEO for a while, and so we know, as Phil said, we noticed that as Ramadan came in, our rankings for Ramadan increased, and then once Ramadan was over, Islamic relief was seen as less relevant maybe for Ramadan terms, and then we saw the rankings start to dip in the off season, and sure enough, as Ramadan has come around again, we're currently in Ramadan for 2021. Our rankings have, as Ramadan started, our rankings have gone up as well. And so seasonal fluctuations in rankings are something that I've actually not seen before. And it's just a really interesting kind of side note. So yeah, back to Jenny.
I was just writing something down. It's really interesting to hear you both talk about it. I was going to say as well that it depends is like the ultimate SEO answer. We'll go on to talk about that a little bit later, but it's hard sometimes to have a one size fits all approach. But I think all of these top 10 tips could be applied to your site, and they are the most impactful things that you can do. But how much of an impact it has depends on your objectives, and it depends on your website and your setup and what you've already done, for example. Carrying on with content design, your next step is to ensure that your key landing pages map to your target keywords. So make sure you've chosen a focus keyword for your key landing pages, and that keyword is, as you saw with Islamic relief, we tend to choose the primary keyword with the highest search volume, as long as that's the one you want to target and it's attainable. And then some copywriting advice for you as well. So think about, with that page, do you answer all your users' questions about the topic? Are you writing around the topic and using related keywords? And thinking about those subheadings in isolation, do those HTML headings make sense without the content? Like, do they have the keywords in, and can you see the structure of the page in them? Init number 2 is on-page optimization. So showing search engines and users that the page is relevant. We all know what meta information is, but it's still really, really important. And why it's important is that like if you're doing Google ads or Facebook ads, it's a way to, thinking about like ad copy, it's a way to demonstrate what information is on the page where a user will click through. So if you put that much thought into ad copy, then why not thinking about it for meta information, where for many websites over 50% of traffic comes from organic search. As a note, Google can decide to change the search snippet. So you can write your meta information and they might decide to tailor it slightly towards the user search query, but it's still worth having it because it still does appear in search results. And so what we have here in this example is targeting a page for credit cooperatives in rural Africa. And so here I've highlighted in red what where I've put the primary keywords. So it's in the page URL slug, it's in the page title, and it's in the meta description. Not only that, but that keyword has been used in a different format. So credit cooperatives becomes savings and credit cooperatives with the acronym SECOs. In pink, you can see that there's other information which gives context about the page, and I've repeated the keyword rural Africa as well in the page title and meta description. So here is an example of what I like to do when optimizing a page. Just as an aside, I hate the word optimization because it sounds like something that should happen after a page goes live, just, you know, make it better. But it should happen when you're designing content. And so content strategists, writers, and designers should have this as part of their role. So when designing a page, think about all of these elements separate to the content, in terms of when you review it, show where you've thought about the keyword in the H1 page heading, in the URL or the page slug, in the page title, meta title, in the meta description. Is the keyword or secondary keywords in the HTML subheadings, image alt text, and have you included those and other related keywords within the page? And if you have this at the planning stage, then it helps you shape that content in a much more SEO friendly way. So have a look at your key pages and ensure that they are optimized for a target keyword, and make sure that all of these elements, page title, headings, subheadings, match the target keywords. And in at number one, the most important thing that we believe that you should focus on this year is page experience. Nick started his previous webinar saying that this is the most important thing, and this is what we're finishing with today. So search engines give preference to websites that load faster. A faster site is better for user experience and reduces the number of users who will abandon the site. And Google has recently created new metrics, these core web vitals, to help webmasters understand and improve their site speed and performance. In the last webinar, we told you that these would roll out from mid-May, but very recently, Google has announced that this is being pushed back. So the core web vitals rollout will come into play from mid-June to the end of August. And the way it's coming into play is it's not going to be one day where the algorithm changes and there'll be a sudden massive fluctuation in rankings. But Google, in their own words, have said that they're going to sprinkle it like seasoning through websites. So at some point this summer, your website will start to be judged on its page load experience, including page load speed and mobile usability. Google is going to be judging it on the core metrics. So FID is first input delay, LCP is largest contentful paint, and CLS is cumulative layout shift. And essentially what this is how long it takes for the page to start loading, how long it takes before the biggest element appears on the page, and whether when the page is loading, elements shift all over the place and disorient the user. Here's an example of a tool that we use to monitor page speed for one of our clients. This is really important to do to make sure that your page speed and mobile usability is as good as possible. And the next steps for you is to review your mobile page load experience, including load speed. So whether in-house for your developers or with an external agency, now is the time to review your site and make improvements to your page experience. So do this site speed and mobile UX review. Use both lab and field data to test page load speed. In my experience, developers like lab data because it's something you can benchmark against and test against every time. But from an SEO point of view and in Google's eyes, it's important to think about this from the user's perspective. So collecting real user data and seeing how this is actually working and how your users are interacting with your site is vitally important. And finally, ongoing monitoring of page experience as well. So not just kind of fit and forget, test it and then assume that it's fine, but monitor your site speed on an ongoing basis. These are some of the tools that we use to measure site speeds. We've got the lab tests using Lighthouse reports like Page Speed Insights and Google's web.dev website for their new core web vitals. And then you can get real user data by using Chrome's UX dashboard. And also we set up our clients using Debug Bear for monitoring and alerts as well.
Jenny, so just to
Yes.
quickly add to that slide. So there's a question from Sarah here who's asking the difference between lab and field data. And I know that this is something that you've recently been dealing with one of your clients. So I thought maybe you could answer that one live right now.
Yes, thanks, Nick. Thanks, Sarah. So the what we've done is we started doing, so we've always been doing site speed reports, and we tend to use, as SEOs, we've tended to use Google's reports to show where there are errors to fix. And I think these are useful in themselves. And this is where we've been working with developers who usually use different tools and who didn't necessarily see the issues that we were seeing. So we found that there's so many different ways of testing. And so some advice that I can give you is to talk to everyone who has an interest in this, so all the stakeholders and like the website editor and developers, and agree on a way of testing. So if it's lab data being a test that you run now. So for example, if I use Page Speed Insights, I would put in a URL and a test would be run at that moment using a certain technology profile, and would give me a result from this server. Whereas real user data is where Google Chrome collects data from how users have experienced your site over time, and it shows issues where they've been actually experiencing issues with your website. So agree on what you're testing, because this is where my recent work has come into play, is that we were using 2 different tests and coming out with 2 different sets of results. So we've come together and worked out what is the most important thing to test, created these profiles. So we're saying that we want to test on 5G with no throttling with an iPhone 6 user. Choose your user profile and then see what the lab tests come back and say. Do that lab test 3, 5, 7 times and take an average of that, and then that gives you average data to work from. You can tell, like, I'm still on the side of using user data as well. I still think it's really, really important, because that's what Google is seeing. Google uses the information from the Chrome user report to report on core web vitals in Google Search Console. So when you see these errors saying, oh, you failed web core vitals because your LCP is too large, then they're using a combination of lab data and real user data, which is why it's important to look at both. I hope that has cleared up a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool. So that is the end of our 10 tips that you can action now. And I think it's time to move to questions.
Yeah, good. We've got some good ones here, and just been noting down as we go along. And thanks to everyone who's asked them. So I'll ask them in order that they were asked rather. So what do you? It's quite a broad question, this, and I think it's around a bit of process, and maybe I was outlining a bit of the process that we go through. But the question was, what's the best way to map particular keywords to specific pages? Nick, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one. So when you think about this problem, you've got to think about keywords in two different ways. You've got short tail and you've got long tail. So short tail being the shorter ones, which are going to be more generic and much higher competition. And then the long tail being longer, more specific and lower competition. And so when you're trying to map keywords to a specific page, you want to try and get a variation of short and long tail on the same page. And then in terms of mapping, you want to think about it in terms of the marketing funnel. So your short tail terms will generally be related to the very lower end of the marketing funnel, and your longer tail ones will be generally more related to the awareness and consideration phases. So you want to basically try and make sure that your page can capture users at both at all sections of the funnel. This is in general. Obviously, there are cases where this might not work, but in general, you want to try and to do this, you can include header tags that may cover the longer tail keywords. That would then increase the relevancy of that page for those long tail keywords, and also have kind of a halo effect and increase the relevancy for the short tail as well. So that would be my answer to how we map keywords on a page basis.
Great, thank you, Nick. And the other one is quite a common question we get asked, I think, in our day-to-day work with SEO, but it's around kind of self-competition, really. How important is it, or does it matter really if your own pages are competing against each other? Or if I guess the question broadly is, what if you have a series of pages that pertain to a similar topic? How do you go about prioritizing which one should be for this term and which one should be for that term? What's the kind of process there?
So again, I have quite a good answer for this, and Jenny, feel free to add to this if you can think of anything as well. But in terms of this being a problem, I see it as that there are two ways that this could pan out. You either have two pages ranking for very similar things. So I was talking about Zakat earlier, as Islamic Relief is one of my clients. So say there was two Zakat pages that had very, very similar content, almost duplicated, talking about what it is, how it's celebrated, the donations that are required, etc. And say you had those two ranking alongside each other. That would be a problem, because that means that you've got duplicated content, and Google basically will look at it and say, wait, these two pages are very similar. I don't know which one to rank, so I'm just going to rank them both, but also I'll rank them a bit lower because there's something going on here. So that's when it's a problem. But when it's not a problem is when, say, you might have a so let's take Ramadan for example. So you might have the Ramadan landing page, but then you also might have the Ramadan timetable page ranking in the same search results page. In my opinion, that's not a problem, because they're two separate pages, and Google said, right, well, both of these pages are relevant for the term Ramadan, so I'm going to rank them both. Yeah, so in terms of self-competition, I think you've got to look at the problem in those two lenses. And if it's the first one, then something needs to be done. If it's the second one, I don't think there's a problem.
I can add to that, Nick, and also say that it's another it depends SEO answer, but we look at it on a case-by-case basis, because it depends if the pages are different enough. So if you think about Ramadan and Ramadan timetable, and you look at the keywords, the search intent for what people want, and the massive keyword volume for those two things, then they are worth having as two separate pages, because people searching for them want two different things. The information they want is different. You could make that decision to have one big page on Ramadan that contains all the information about it, but it's also on a case-by-case basis, we can make the decision to say, do you know what, we can split this out. The user intent is different. There's enough people searching for it to warrant its own page. And that's how we do keyword research and map its different pages, as we kind of do this process of questioning where it's worth having a page that will be successful for SEO, and where, in some instances, where it's not, and we decide to keep those two pages together.
Great, thanks both. Amelia has asked a question that is one of my sort of all-time favorite topics when it comes to SEO, and a challenge that I think everyone on this call panelists and attendees will recognise. There's often a tension, isn't there? I use the word tension without any connotations. It's a great word. Tension has to exist in SEO, but there's often a tension between how you balance internal brand speak or brand requirements, as Amelia puts it, around what terms are used to describe a service. I guess you know what is coming next versus what a user actually searches for. And this is it really is at the core of successful SEO, I think, and that the work that you guys have done with NHS.UK has really had to tackle some of these issues. But I wondered if you could just offer any insights into how you balance that tension.
Yes, I think it totally resonates with me. Like, a lot of conversations I have are around this, and I think working with Greenpeace, I had this tension, and we had to collaborate on this to say which topic pages we could change the names of. So for example, Greenpeace had a new campaign coming out around forests, which that's fine, that's what people are searching for, and the content we recommended under that were targeting keywords like Amazon rainforest, for example. But what was difficult for in their case, they weren't able to change. They have a campaign landing page on meat and dairy, but people don't search for meat and dairy. They might search for cattle and deforestation, for example, and more specific questions around that. With the content strategy we created, we tried to be clever in suggesting splitting out, you've got your campaigns, they can't necessarily be changed, but also thinking about creating like a thematic set of topic pages. So there's lots of opportunities to explore, like, could you have your campaigns as a separate section which then links to a separate landing page? Could you have a section of content which is created specifically for SEO, or could it be that you have like many sub pages underneath which are themselves targeting keywords? So this is where we kind of collaborate and compromise. I think Nick probably has a good example with NHS and working within the new mental health hub.
I can't think of sorry, I'm
throwing
what
it to you now.
You're leading me into there is, but I do actually have a slightly different answer that I wanted to chip in with, and basically so the keyword, I think, in your question, Amelia, is internal. So it sounds like you're battling with internal stakeholders over the use of terminology. And I think when it comes to that kind of battle, let's say, I think there's two things you need: is data and competitor comparison. So you get the data, you get the search volume data, and you say, look, 100,000 people are searching a month. That's a ridiculous number, but 1,000 people a month are searching for this term, and 0 people a month are searching for the term that you want to use. And then you say, look, but the data is there, you can see it right in front of you. And then to take it one step further, you say, look, our competitors are ranking in position 1 and 2 and 3 for the one that searches 1,000 a month, and we rank in position 1 for the one that nobody's searching for with no other competition. Then suddenly you really kind of get the stakeholder on board with this kind of language change.
And I guess the two obvious sources of that data, Nick, would be, because someone else asked about keyword research tools. I think rather than those paid for tools that might not necessarily have that kind of smaller subset of data, Google Search Console is a great tool. It's free, and that will really give you that data around specifically what users are searching for. And the other one is Google Ads, right? I mean, that's a really great tool if you're using a Google Ad Grant or you're using paid for PPC. You get this enormous amount of keyword data in the search terms reports there that you can pull out and help you to make the case.
Brilliant. I think that brings us to a nice tidy conclusion, and we're bang on time as well, so well done. Thank you, Jenny and Phil and Nick as well, and thank you everybody for coming. I will send a follow-up email with the recording as promised, and if you've got any other questions, then don't hesitate to ask me those over email as well, and we hope to see you all at an event very soon.